Welcome, everybody, to the Lake Ann Camp Life at its Best podcast. My name is Caleb Andrus. Today with me, I have John Scally. I'm going to let him introduce himself in just a minute. But before we do, check this out. Thank you again for joining us today. Again, I have with me John Scally. He is one of our board members here. He's also a pastor down in, not Flint, but right by Flint.
Well, it is Flint Township here.
Township. Okay.
Yeah,
So I'll let you explain a little bit about that in a second.
sure.
But he's with us today. We actually have a couples retreat this weekend, so he's our main speaker for that. And it's been a great weekend so far. And so just excited to have him here with us. So, John, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit first about what you're doing now, where you're a pastor at, and let's just go from there.
Yeah, so I'm the lead pastor of Emmanuel Church in Flint Township. We also have a campus in Grand Blanc. We've been there going on 11 and a half years now.
Okay.
And I was a youth pastor before that for about 17 years. So we love what we're doing. We're praising the Lord, and it's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Emmanuel's a big part of Lake Ann Camp. They come every summer and they come up for retreats and all that kind of stuff. So let's talk a little bit about that to start with. How
Okay.
did you find out about the camp, and maybe tell us how that relationship kind of started?
Yeah, so when I first came to Emmanuel, a couple of the guys in our church were board members, and they said, "Hey, we have a board meeting coming up on a Friday morning. We want you to go up to the camp and check out Lake Ann Camp." And so I thought, okay, that's fine. Then they told me it was 5 in the morning. I'm like, oh, all right. So we got in the car at 5 in the morning and we drove up to the camp and got here. And they had to go to their board meeting. And so at the time, the other program director that was here, Brandon, he showed me around.
Mm-hmm.
And so he gave me a tour of the place. And we started looking at different things. And I asked him a question because this is how I thought. I asked him where the gym was.
Mm.
And he told me that they didn't have a gym. And I remember at the time thinking, what kind of lame camp doesn't have a gym?
Right.
And so he started showing me other things, though, and things I'd never seen before: the horse whisperer, the high ropes, the low ropes, Goliath, all these different things. And he began to explain to me how the camp uses those to teach the kids about the Lord in just a very unique and creative way. And that really stood out to me because I had ran all sorts of camps in the past as a youth pastor, Wisconsin, all over Michigan, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Some I went to, some I ran. And but I always thought that, the Jesus part is all about chapel, right?
Mm.
And maybe God and I time. But I began to learn that, man, at Lake Ann, they teach the kids about God in the most incredible ways all day.
Yeah.
Literally all day. And I remember the Lord smote my heart, and I called my wife from the camp. And I told her, this is going to be the greatest camp our kids have ever gone to.
Mm. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I really enjoy about the camp here is we do integrate that teaching throughout the day, but it's not in a weird way.
Yeah.
A lot of places, or I think when people hear that, they may think, well, we don't want that weirdness, but it's not
Mhm.
like that at all. It's a very natural conversation as we go throughout our day, which is what the Bible teaches. As we go through our day, it should just be part of who you are and what you do and your decisions that you make. And so we just kind of bring that aspect in. You mentioned high ropes and the challenge course and things like that, and all of those things that the counselors do with the campers are all fun. It's
Yeah.
it's a great time. We have lots of smiles and a lot of laughs, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of questions too. Why did you do what you did, and how did you feel when this happened? And those are all questions that we can bring right back to the Bible.
Yeah, it's incredible. I remember one time watching the counselors teaching at the Leap of Faith,
Mhm.
and just what is that thing that you have to give over to God? And the kids, climb up the pole, and then they have to jump off the platform and hit the ball, and they're all tied in and everything. But
Mm.
it takes a lot of faith in order to do that. And
Mm.
I remember the counselors asking them, "What is that thing you have to give over to God?" And those kinds of things. I had never seen that kind of
Mhm.
interaction before.
Yeah.
So.
We had Ross on. Ross Martello is one of your youth pastors there at
Mhm.
the is it the Flint campus that he
Yes.
has? Okay. So we had him on a few weeks ago,
Okay.
and he mentioned how his teens, when they come up, their conversations that they've never really thought about before.
Mhm.
So, there's school and there's friends and there's family and all that kind of things, but just taking that next step, next kind of level to those conversations. So, so you've been coming up for, you said 11 and a half years in.
Yeah, since I've been at Emmanuel, we came in August of 2012. Yeah.
Okay. All
So
right.
Emmanuel was going to Lake Ann long before that, though.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So your main responsibility at the church there is lead pastor. So you speak every week.
Mm-hmm.
How many are at your church? Kind of tell us a little bit about your church and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so we have two campuses. Flint is the main campus.
Mhm.
Grand Blanc is a revitalization project that we started over 2 years ago now. And it was the old Great Lakes Baptist Temple
Okay.
on the corner of Saginaw and Maple. The church was down to 20 or 30 people.
Hmm.
And God just gave us an opportunity to go in and revitalize it. And by His grace, the church is running 150 to 170 now
Wow.
in 2 years. So we praise the Lord for that.
Yeah.
It's there's a lot of work still to be done, but we've hired some people to lead over there, and I still preach over there.
Hmm.
And so we have three different gatherings between our two campuses, two in Flint and one in Grand Blanc, and I preach two of the three.
Okay.
So yeah,
You're a busy guy.
I'm a busy guy, and I love to be busy.
Yeah,
So
well, that's good. That's
yeah,
that's good because you got
yeah,
it. All
because I
right,
am.
all
Yeah.
right. So you're here this weekend as our couples retreat speaker. We have three couples retreats. This is the second one. We have just over 100 people, over 50 couples.
Mm.
Some are staying here at the camp. Some are out in the RV park. Some are staying offsite. But it's a good weekend so far. So what have you kind of seen as you've come into the couples retreat as a speaker? What have you seen as you kind of bring the word to them?
Yeah, I mean, I can see it on their faces. They're hungry for truth. They're
Hmm.
hungry for help. There's a lot of conflict that couples are in all the time. I mean, my wife and I struggle early on in our marriage, especially, and so God's kind of given us a platform to help people.
Hmm.
And I counsel couples like all the time,
Yeah.
and so it's just a real opportunity to speak into their hearts. And they're really attentive. They're really focused, and we've had some good conversation even after the sessions, and some questions that they've asked that we've shared during the session. So it seems to be a group that's really open and hungry, and I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think marriage as an institution in general is being attacked all
Yeah.
throughout the media and in TV shows and movies and all those kinds of things. So I think that as we do these retreats, I think it's just that much more of a reminder how important it
Mhm.
is to have groups like this come in. And it's exciting to see that they're taking time out of their schedules to come and maybe even not necessarily work on, but just be with each other, kind of
Mhm.
to get away from that environment that is day in and day out and work and family and all those kinds of things. Just get away from that a little bit
Yeah.
to be with each other.
Yeah, I think that's really important. We talk a lot about date nights and spending time together and
Mhm.
really being intentional when it comes to the time that you spend with one another. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So my wife and I have been married for, it'll be 20 years this year.
Mhm.
June will be 20 years. And our first few years was rough as well. And I think it was that whole, I was independent. So I was an independent guy. I moved out of my family's house as soon as I was 18, got a job, did the whole thing. And then all of a sudden you're taking that and trying to bring it together with another person, and it just gets messy
Mhm.
sometimes. So if somebody's listening and this is their first kind of few years of marriage, what kind of tips or maybe advice could you give to somebody in that position?
Yeah, so right before I got married, there was a guy in our church in my youth ministry. His family, he and his wife had three daughters in our youth group, and I was right about to marry my wife now, Tammy. And he said to me something I'll never forget. It was very profound. At the time, I thought it was ridiculous, but he said to me, "John, it's going to take you 10 years before you learn how to love your wife."
Hmm.
And I remember thinking, I already in love,
Right.
before I get married,
Yeah.
But man, it's such a process. And I just want to encourage you to keep going, to be committed, to keep learning, keep growing. Have somebody in your life that will speak truth into your life, because it gets better. It
Hmm.
does. It gets deeper. It gets just more profound. It just gets sweeter as the days go by, as you work through the process. And my wife and I now are in a really great place. But in the early years, it was really hard.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen a I guess what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like a direct correlation of having those people in someone's life that will speak truth.
Hmm.
Have you seen a difference when you have somebody like that around you versus when you don't?
Yeah, I think so, because a lot of times when you don't have that, you're just emotionally based.
Mhm.
And so, you can either live in feelings or you can live in facts. And you need people in your life to speak facts to you. In that life coach, that mentor, um, we talk about that all the time in Emmanuel, having people to speak that into your life.
Mhm.
And so it does make a huge difference, because a lot of times you can only see from a certain perspective, and you're limited in what you see. And there's a whole other side to it. And we always tell couples, and we've said it already this weekend, how important it is to focus on yourself. Look in the mirror and change you. It starts with you.
Mhm. So if someone is looking for somebody like that in their life, where could they find someone to kind of come alongside of them and help them through some of those processes?
Yeah, I think you need to go to your pastor or your
Mhm.
pastors in your church, your elders. Like, I think it's really important that they be proactive in helping you with that. And
Mhm.
so, what I would encourage is, like, if you're not sure where to turn, go to your pastors. And the thing is, maybe you have a father or a mother who's a spiritual leader in your life too. You can go to them and ask them for their advice
Mhm.
because they may have somebody that they can ask to be a part of that too for you. I think, like, to have a family member is not really the point.
Mhm.
I think you need somebody on the outside, someone with a little bit of experience, even more so than you, and somebody that can make that difference in your life. But I just really encourage you to go to your pastors. Like,
Yeah.
we tell people all the time, we're here to help you, but we don't know what you need unless you come to us.
Mhm.
So that's what I would do.
So another thing that I hear a lot of times is once a couple has children, a lot of times those children can as crazy as it sounds, drive a wedge between
Mhm.
the husband and wife because their priorities are kind of out of whack a little
Yeah.
bit. And I know you spoke a little bit to that yesterday. Can you kind of maybe expound on that a little bit here?
Yeah, it's so easy to let your life revolve around your kids and their activities, their extracurricular activities. I mean, we have three children and they're all 20 months apart. And so there was a time when we were going to soccer practices and we were going to band concerts and we were going to upward events and we were going all these kinds of things,
Mhm.
right? So there's a couple thoughts I would give to this. Number one, you're not a bad parent if you say no to some things.
Mhm.
So don't be in a place in your life where you're saying yes to everything because it's important that we tell our kids no sometimes because these families a lot of times they get so busy that they're never eating dinner together. They're going in every which way. Dad's taking his son to this, mom's taking her daughter to that, and they're not spending time together. So I'd say it's okay to say no to some things. And the other thing is you have to be intentional about date nights and spending time together. It's really, really important that you build your relationship first of all in Jesus, and through Jesus you build your relationship on your spouse. So my wife and I, for the first time, well, I shouldn't say for the first time, we are now, though, empty nesters
Mhm.
this year, first year, right?
Okay.
Two of my daughters are at Cedarville University, and my son is married. Just saw him today, actually. It's awesome. But they're out of the house. And so, my wife and I, though, love each other and
Mhm.
we get along and enjoy spending time together.
Mhm.
But that's been something we built over time.
Yeah, I think so. They say like, year three is a big divorce year, year seven's a big divorce year, and then empty nesters is a big divorce
Mm-hmm.
year. Which when I first heard that, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. They've been together for so long. Why would they
Mm-hmm.
get divorced now? And I think it's
Yeah.
because those relationships weren't built throughout when they had their children with them.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You have to be investing in your marriage. And by the way, there's nothing that's greater outside of Jesus for your children than for them to see mom and dad loving each other,
Hmm.
enjoying each other, spending time with each other. And when when you kiss your wife or whatever, they literally, though, it brings confidence to their soul to see
Hmm.
mom and dad loving each other.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I remember saying that when my parents did it
yeah,
too. It's like,
yeah, we
oh,
all
that's
have,
gross.
right?
Nobody likes that.
Yeah.
You said something too yesterday that I thought was really cool. And I guess I never thought of it this way, and that is that you put God and ministry in the same boat when you first started ministry.
Hmm.
Put God and ministry in the same boat, and you kind of put that above that relationship with your spouse. You know what I'm talking about
Yeah,
when
I
you
do.
mentioned that?
Yeah, I do. Trust
Okay.
me.
Can you kind of explain that a little bit? Because I've thought about that before, but the way you said it, it just kind of made sense a little bit better.
Yeah, I think the mistake I made early on in my marriage, and some of this was just teaching from the influences in my life,
Hmm.
where ministry, serving the Lord, and my relationship with God were all together, and then my family
Hmm.
was second. And so what happened was I would literally, because of that misunderstanding, really of what the Word of God says, because the Bible tells in 2 Timothy 5:8 that if a man doesn't provide for his family, he's worse than an unbeliever. And it's more than just physically, I believe. It's spiritually, mentally, emotionally. So what happened was I would be caring for everybody else, and my wife in particular would get the crumbs. By the time that God really changed my heart, my kids were still very young, and so they got the good side of me. But
Hmm.
early on in our marriage, my wife got a lot of crumbs because I was going every night of the week and I was serving the Lord. And I just looked at it like it's all in the same boat instead of God, my relationship with God being number one, my relationship with
Hmm.
my family being number two, and my relationship to others in ministry being number three. And that
Hmm.
was a big change I needed to make.
Yeah, I think as a dad, as a guy, as a parent, all those kinds of things. my first thing that I always go to is, well, am I providing financially? Okay,
Yeah.
so can I provide for my family that way? And then, church, and then relationship comes next. And so I think, even for me, even now, sometimes I get that out of whack. And I think it's a
Mhm.
constant reminder, you got to come back and work on that relationship first.
Yeah, because if you lose your kids and you lose your wife, it doesn't matter who you've influenced outside of that.
Right.
And I mean, at the end of the day, like your family is your very first ministry. So I've seen both sides of this. I've seen people that were like me early on where they worked too much.
Hmm.
And then I've seen people on the other side of it that just want to, slough off and not work hard. So there is a balance. That's why the thing is you have to have certain boundaries that you establish, that you and your wife establish, that you both agree to, that are healthy for, that you avoid both extremes, that you're serving the Lord passionately, but you're also really faithful to your family.
Hmm.
So,
So I'm going to kind of throw this, maybe this is a loop. I don't know. I might throw you off. I don't
no,
know.
it's okay.
But I know date night is important.
Sure.
I also know that, especially in this time and age, that finances are also extremely tight.
Hmm.
And so a lot of times when we think date night, we think we have to go do something, go out to dinner, go out to do, all these, see a movie, whatever the case may be. What are some things that you've done in your relationship that didn't cost money, but were still part of your relationship?
Yeah. So for my wife and I, Tammy, it's taking a drive together.
Mm.
It's taking our dogs on a walk. It's watching a movie together at home where it doesn't cost anything,
Hmm.
and we're just, spending $20 on pizza and or less, and then watching a movie. It's things like that. It's walking around the mall, but we're not there to shop. We're just there to walk around and talk to each other.
Sure.
It's things like that that don't cost a lot of money. It's going up to Wendy's and getting a 99-cent ice cream or something like that. So those are the kinds of things that we do together. Now it's easier for us to do them now because our kids are out of the house.
Sure.
But even back when they were in the house, we did things similar to this that were just inexpensive. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. And that's the point, right? Don't feel like you have to do something extravagant. And I think the thing for us is, and whenever we're talking about this, one thing we always say is like, it's not really even about watching a movie.
Hmm.
Because when you're watching a movie, you're really focused on the movie.
Hmm.
Unless you have dinner attached to that or something else where you're spending time and then watching the movie. But it's really having conversation, putting your phone down, and just really enjoying each other's company, building into the friendship aspect of your relationship.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap this episode up, uh, tell us maybe some things that we haven't talked about yet that you've seen successful as you've counseled people over the years. Just maybe some tips that you could pass along to somebody who may be struggling with their relationship right now with their spouse.
Yeah, I just talked about it in our second session, and I just talked about it with my wife when we went out to lunch today. And it is guaranteed to help you. It's the replacement principle. It's guaranteed to help you. Like when you're in the middle of a conflict, you're not going to solve the conflict in that moment.
Mm.
The way that psychologically a man is and the way that psychologically a woman is, you're not going to handle it well. And so you have to walk away from each other, give it some time. And not to the point of where you never deal with it again.
Mhm.
You have to come back and deal with it. But let the emotion come down. Give it a couple hours, 2, 3, 4 hours, and then come back and have conversation about it. And so that's a major tip that I give the couples all the time. The other one is when it comes to communication.
Mhm.
I think communication is one of the biggest issues that couples have. So whenever I'm counseling, I always tell couples in the beginning of your week, you should sit down for half an hour or less and talk about three things. You should talk about your money, your finances. You should talk about your expectations for one another for that week, and you should talk about your schedules
Mhm.
for that week. And I'm just telling you, if you have clarity when it comes to your schedules, the expectations for each other for that week, in your money, I mean, you're going to really help yourself out.
Mhm. Yeah. I think I love that. And I think I would add one more thing even, and that is just praying with your spouse.
Mm,
I think that especially early on in our marriage, it was almost weird to pray. And I thought that was like, why am I having such a hard time praying with my wife? That seems
yeah,
awkward. Like
sure.
we've done all sorts of other things together. Why is it weird to pray with my wife? And I think just having that emotional connection on that level, emotional and spiritual connection, I think is really important as well.
Amen. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, John, thanks again for being here
Thank you
today.
for
I
having me.
appreciate it. Thanks for speaking at our retreat this
Mhm.
weekend. It's a great retreat. We're having a great time. So thanks for taking a couple minutes out of your day and doing this with us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Love Lake Ann.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate it. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Life at Its Best podcast, do me a favor, click on that like or subscribe button for YouTube. If you're listening to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, that's great as well. Subscribe to that. We'd love to hear any comments that you have for us. If you have any questions, concerns, let us know, and we'll discuss those in our next episode. Thanks again. Talk to you later.